so many new pieces to this IU football team.
To me, that's going to set the tone on how you get ready for games on Saturday in the fall.
I would put that Indiana room up against anybody else in the conference, and that's something that we typically don't even come close to saying.
If you want to get total sickos committee about it, there's a position battle at long snapper too.
This is the Hoosier Huddle Podcast, part of the College Huddle Podcast Network.
All right, welcome to the weekly Hoosier Huddle Indiana football chat. I'm Sammy Jacobs. It'll be me and you guys tonight. So send in your questions. We've got a whole list of topics I've come up with. We'll preview the Maryland game, give you a matchup to watch, keys to win. We'll talk about the Big Ten title race, the college football playoff race as well. Hey, Colorado Cuggle. Awesome to see you. And then we'll talk about the insane coaching carousel, the impact that Indiana has had on it as well. And, of course, in between, we'll take questions from fans. So, send in your questions, send in your comments. We are ready to talk Indiana football at Maryland. But first, I do want to plug some subscriptions. So, I put the link in the chat. We are fully running, ready to go. Basketball season's here. Football season is getting to the real fun part of the season, where we're talking about postseason races as well. It is $30 for 12 months. It is $3 per month on the other one. And there's also a free subscription. If you just want to come and talk on the forums and read our free articles, there's a free subscription as well. But if you want the IU reactionary pieces, inside the numbers, exclusive interviews and stuff like that, there is a fee. But let's get down to business and talk Indiana Maryland. IU takes on Maryland at 3:30 on CBS out in College Park. The game is not sold out yet. There are a bunch of tickets left. If you're an Indiana fan in that DMV area, this is your chance to go see the number 2 team in the country take on Maryland. So should be a good one as well. So send in your questions. I'll give you a few minutes to send in questions. Then we'll go over the matchup against Maryland. All right, let's get into you got to think if Fisher's even 90%, you sit him. I don't know. It's a 21 and a half point spread. Some people could say it's a gimme game. If he's 90%, I think you give it a go. But as soon as you get up by multiple scores, you probably limit him and put him on a snap count or just take him out. But he seemed fine after they show him singing in the locker room after the game with his equipment on, and he's smiling. I think if it's any sort of a serious injury, he's not doing that at all. I would probably move that number to 70 if he's 70%. Yeah, just sit him. Play Caden Turner and Jeff Utzinger back there. But yeah, you get them ready for Penn State and then the stretch run, which TJ and I talked about on the podcast this week. The bye week comes at a really good time for this Indiana team, the second bye week. We'll get to Frankie in a second because I don't want to speculate on an injury, but you could kind of tell what happened as he was on the sideline. But going back to Colorado's comment, the bye week comes at a perfect time. You've got a 3-game stretch here with Maryland, at Penn State, Wisconsin, and then you have a bye week at Purdue. If all goes to the plan of Indiana football and Indiana football fans, you are playing in the Big Ten title game December 6th. So you have bye week Purdue, Big Ten title game, and then you see what happens. There's a couple weeks. If you win, you're going to get a bye to this quarterfinals, which are New Year's Day and New Year's Eve. If you lose, you could still get a bye, depending on what else happens. But for argument's sake, let's say you're going to host a playoff game then. So those are, I believe, December 19th and 20th. So you got a couple weeks there. So you have a couple weeks. You have like 3 weeks built in to kind of get your guys right. But yeah, Aiden Fisher, I would put that number down to 70, and then you sit him. David C., what happened to Frankie? Looked like he pulled a groin muscle. We all saw the kickoff. It was like, what the heck was that? And then you turn around and he's laying on the floor, kind of like a scene in was it Wedding Crashers, where he looks every time he looks around. I think Vince Vaughn is coughing up blood because of a dirty hit, but it was not. There was no physical contact from anybody else. I would think that he does not play. I don't think that you really need Brandon Frankie against Maryland. So we'll see. But I do on the sideline. He's pointing at his groin when he's talking. To the other kickers, saying what happened and all that stuff. Phil Fowler, last year the committee said a team wouldn't lose a spot by losing in a conference championship game. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't think they lose a playoff spot, but there's, you look at who else can, you think, okay, Ohio State gets, one of the top four. You'd think the SEC champion, if they're one loss, gets one loss or no losses, gets one of the top four spots. And then you got to see what the ACC does with, is it Georgia Tech, who's undefeated? And if they go undefeated, they would beat a Georgia team. If they're one loss and 12-1 with an ACC title, maybe they get bumped into a 3 spot. But yeah, you're right on that border of, if IU wins, you probably get the number 1 spot or number 2 spot. If IU loses, you're looking at a 4 or 5. Frankly, I'd like the 5 spot. But it's one of those two. Yeah, they're not going to punish. You go down a slippery slope for punishing people for losing in a conference championship game, because then what's the point of playing? Like, if we're playing this extra game that really, I don't want to discredit a conference title because that would be awesome, but it's like, just go back to the shared titles like you did in the before you had a conference championship chip game. It's a game that is just the first step on the road to a national title. And if you're going to cost yourself, 1, you could get injured in that game, and 2, playoff positioning where it's going to harm you if you lose rather than just not being harmed, not playing, then why even play? It's just a money grab from the conference, which is what college football has become anyway. It is all a money grab. But that's a good point, Phil. But committees change. There's different people on the committee this year, and we'll see. I don't think they would lose their spot in the college football playoff, but the seeding could change because a team with a conference championship could be rewarded over an Indiana team who would lose in a conference championship team. Not being punished, but not being rewarded, if that makes any sense. So there are definitely definitely a lot's at stake over the next 4 weeks of the regular season. And, the odds are tilted towards IU going undefeated. Now, you got to take it 1 week at a time. And it starts at Maryland this weekend, who Mike Loxley said this is IU's their get-right game, that we're, the toughest opponent this week's not IU, it's ourselves and all that stuff. They're kind of the opposite of what UCLA was. They started 4-0, not 0-4, and they've lost 3 in a row. So we'll see if the Mike Loxley November slide continues. So we'll see. Who do you think is next up after Daly and Kamara on the edge? I could tell during the UCLA game I saw Diapepe and Dukeway. Yeah, both of those guys played. Both of those guys made plays after Daly. I also think Andrew Turvey's in there. He came in at Oregon. Now it could be different on the road as opposed to home. At home, you can dress, 105, or whatever the full dress list is. On the road, I believe you could only bring 70 or 75. So somebody like Diapepe, who might be a luxury at home, might not travel to a conference road game. Now that'll change in the postseason. I don't know if it changes in the conference title game. I haven't looked into it that much, but those were 2 names in there. Andrew Turvey has been in there as well. But yeah, Daly's played really well. And Dukeway got more snaps than he has, this season at that position. So I think somebody commented on our podcast that, Indiana's depth is kind of the same as it was in August. It's just more developed, which is kind of true. But yeah, it's how you develop depth is playing guys. So keep them coming. Yeah, Fisher can't go. It looked like Turner was the next linebacker up. Jeff Utzinger has been in there too. I do think it's more of a reshuffling than Turner just comes in for Aiden Fisher. I think Isaiah Jones moves over to Fisher's spot, takes that green dot in the helmet, which they did during the UCLA game, and then Turner, Hardy can be in there as well, and then Jeff Utzinger is too. But I assume that Aiden Fisher is going to play. That's just my gut feeling. I don't think Sig plays the mind games with injuries that some other coaches play. But we'll find out 2 hours before kickoff on the injury list. But I do think he plays on Saturday. How much he plays, we'll see. If this is a game like UCLA where it's over by halftime, he might not play the second half. And do we see more of Charlie Becker and Kobe Martin the rest of the year? Charlie Becker played a lot more. The second team receivers played a lot more against UCLA and a lot earlier against UCLA than I expected. You had that second line team of Becker, Brady, and Bond came in. I think Becker officially got the start on offense because EJ Williams got kind of dinged up on special teams on the opening kickoff. So I do think Becker gets more run. Kobe Martin, that's a big – I don't understand why they're not giving him the ball a little bit more in some big spots. But I do think with games, you could put Maryland in that category where you're a 3-touchdown favorite. Games against Wisconsin, who's looked like they've mailed it in, and Purdue, those are ones where if you're up big, you put in your second teamer so you don't get Roman Hemby or Kalen Black nicked up, and you get ready for that Big Ten title game if you're in that position. Colorado again. Hemby first 100-yard game as a Hoosier this weekend. I think so. Yeah, this seems like a Roman Hemby revenge game. He's heating up too. He's had 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games. He had a real nice game at Oregon. Do I think he gets 100 yards on the ground? Maybe, maybe not. Do I think he gets 100 total yards or all-purpose yards? I do, because I think they use him in the passing game a little bit more. But yeah, I think 100 all-purpose yards or 100 total yards for the Roman Hemby revenge game. Mike Locksley mentioned him too in his press conference this week that, or maybe it was his radio show, but it was the 2 guys, Kellen Wyatt and Roman Hemby, and why he let them go was because they couldn't afford them. And he decided to go with high school guys over Hemby and Kellen Wyatt. So he didn't think they were worth whatever IU paid to bring them in. So that to me kind of put the microscope to what Mike Locksley and Maryland's program is like. Do they have, even with Under Armour and all that stuff, do they have the NIL resources to keep guys who are homegrown, who have been there? It doesn't seem like it. Or is it a philosophy of, hey, we're going to go on the cheaper side or less expensive side and go win the recruiting battles, go get the 4 or 5-star recruits and win the headlines that way and get buzz that way and build that foundation. Now, it hasn't worked. For all the highly touted recruits that he's brought in this year, they're 4-3. And they're not particularly beating the world out of people. Yeah, that he kind of underthrew that, but it's a tricky stadium to judge the wind on too. It kind of Autzen, if you went, the end zone seats kind of go like this. The wind was blowing in from that direction. He was throwing into the wind, and it wasn't a great throw. But yeah, if he leads them a little better, that's probably a touchdown. If not, it's like a 60 or 70-yard play. But Becker still almost made a great catch on it. Phil, question on the coordinators to head coaching positions after the season. Man, with the amount of head coaching jobs that are open and the amount of head coaching jobs that are probably going to open later on with Wisconsin, Michigan State might open, and then the residual effects of who does LSU hire, who does Penn State hire, who does Florida hire? Those, they might take head coaches from other positions. If Bob, the one I would look at is maybe Shanahan or Brian Haynes going back to JMU. If was it Bob Chesney takes one of the jobs, whether it be, I think James Franklin's going to end up at Virginia Tech, but if Bob Chesney, I don't know if Penn State would go after him. I think they should. He should be near the top of their list. I don't think that's a win the press conference hire for them, but it might be a win some ball games hire, kind of like Sig was for Indiana. But if JMU opens, I could see one of the coordinators going to JMU as a head coach. I don't think you lose him. I don't know. If Wisconsin opens, Michigan State opens, and some other schools open, they're going to get some phone calls. But, Indiana's paying their coordinators very well, and you're winning. You got to see what the situation is at these schools. Why isn't Jonathan Smith, who's a very good head coach, succeeding at MSU? Is it because their athletic department's a mess? Is it because they don't have the NIL funding and all that stuff? Same with UCLA. What is UCLA going to do? Are they going to invest in their program? If Wisconsin opens, are they, they haven't bought into this whole NIL movement yet. There's a lot of questions. If I was interviewing for a job, it would be me interviewing them as well. Corey, thanks for the shout out. Yeah, we've been working hard on TikTok and everything to increase our presence, especially with the younger fans and the students as well. So thanks. Maryland's defense is pretty solid, in my opinion. Where do you think IU attacks them on Saturday? I think they attack the line of scrimmage and in the run game. Maryland's, I don't think very deep on the line. Their secondary is pretty good, although they'll be without Jalen Husky for at least the first half. They, because of a targeting penalty, also got hurt on that play. There's been no official update that I found outside of Loxley saying we're hopeful that some of these guys come back, which is not really saying much. But they're giving up nearly 3.5 yards per carry. They also haven't played great competition, and when they have, teams have gone against them that as long as they don't turn the ball over, they're moving the ball. They are giving up total, where's their yards per game? This stupid thing doesn't have it. They're giving up nearly 5 yards per play on offense. So, passing the ball, they're giving up. Their passer rating they're giving up is 117.31. Yeah, they have 11 interceptions, but they've also given up 14 touchdowns and nearly 2,000 passing yards. You have a Heisman candidate quarterback. Let him throw the ball. He's not. So I watched the FAU game. That game was miserable to watch because the clock just didn't move. They ended up passing the ball when they were up 39-7, just didn't move. Secondly, FIU, their quarterback made some terrible throws in terms of they couldn't get the ball there to the receiver, overthrew open receivers, balls went high off receivers' hands. I mean, they had 6 turnovers that game. So it's Fernando Mendoza is better than FAU's quarterback. And he doesn't really put the ball into harm's way all that much. So we'll see. If IU does lose Mike Shanahan, does Tino Cincinnati come back as OC? I don't know. I don't know. You have Chandler Whitmer as the co-OC right now, and I'd say he's doing a pretty good job. He's also the quarterback coach. He took over for Cincinnati. I know the connections between Cignetti and Cincinnati. But, do you hire a guy who was fired at UCLA, even though you know him, to be, basically promoted over the guy you just brought in from the NFL? Or do you bring him in to be the co-offensive coordinator under Chandler Whitmer? But we'll see. I hope that Indiana brings back both coordinators because I think they're paid well enough, and maybe they don't want to be head coach. Not everybody is like Cignetti and wants to be a head coach and will leave. This feels more like UCLA. I think Maryland will get exposed quickly. They don't run the ball very well, and the quarterback, they don't run the ball well at all. They banked on Nolan Ray being really good and let Roman Hemby walk, which was clearly a mistake. Their offensive line is not very good. Their quarterback is a dude, though. His completion percentage is under 60%, but he has 11 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. He could, he's got 1,700 yards passing. He's pretty good. But they don't have they don't have the receivers that they did from last year or the last like 5 years, where there was an NFL receiver or two NFL receivers on the field at all times. And this isn't going to be a Maryland team that jumps out to like a 21-0 lead like they have in the past against IU. I haven't really thought about who takes over at coordinators yet. To be honest with you guys, it just, with everything on the table, we haven't heard that people are looking at IU's coordinators. I would think that Kuntz could come in and take the full-time defensive coordinator job. Buda Williams is on there too. Or you could bring in somebody who has coordinator position and make Kuntz a co-defensive coordinator. But Pat Kuntz has done a awesome, phenomenal job with the interior linemen. Buda Williams has done a phenomenal job with, the outside edge rushers and those linemen. Ola Adams has done an awesome job with secondary. There's just a lot of good coaches on IU staff. Somebody's going to get poached at some point. But right now, there's a lot of movement going on. But you're also in the middle of the season on a team who's going to make a college football playoff run. And we haven't heard anything about people being interviewed. All right, to get to Maryland a little bit more, their offense, this is kind of an inverse Maryland game. Usually their offense is their strength. Their defense is their strength. They're giving up 17 points a game. Sig made them sound like the 85 Bears on Monday, which is just Sig's way of saying things. They do have a lot of young talent. They have Daniel Wingate's really good. If Jalen Husky plays, he's an all Big Ten player. They have some athletes on the outside. However, I don't think they have the size yet of a Big Ten team. And Maryland's been in the league now for 11 years. And it just hasn't seemed that they've transitioned from an ACC body type to a Big Ten body type yet. Now, maybe that's because they're not paying guys who are that body type. Maybe that's the philosophy, is that they just want to be faster. But their offense is not as good as it has been in the past, but their defense is better than it has been in the past. And look, IU, I think, turned the ball over, 5 times against them last year. But Maryland's offense, I think, gained -8 yards, scored 0 points, didn't even get a first down off of those turnovers. I don't think IU turns the ball over 5 times this year against them. But Malik Washington is, he's a true freshman. He's going to see a defense that has confused some very, very good quarterbacks. And, Indiana just has more talent than Maryland right now. And I also think they have a decisive coaching advantage with Cignetti and his staff compared to Mike Loxley, Pep Hamilton, and that staff. So this could be a game where if Indiana starts fast, it could snowball and get out of hand, kind of like UCLA. UCLA had all the good feelings. Oh, they were awesome. They turned a corner. We were cleaning locker rooms. The spirit has changed. And Aiden Fisher kind of crushed those hopes 2 plays into the game. And then, so Maryland comes in, kind of the opposite vibes. Actually, kind of not the opposite. Well, they should be 7-0. They should be, they have 3 losses by 10 points. They had a lead going into the fourth quarter of every game. They should be treated as 7-0. They're a few plays away from being ranked and all that stuff. Indiana's a better team. They're the better coach team. They have more talent. Their offensive line is better. Their defensive line is better. So it should be a decided advantage for IU. What does Mendoza need to do to win the Heisman? I assume we're talking about Fernando and not Alberto. Alberto probably got to wait a year or two. For Fernando, I think for the rest of the year, limit your turnovers. I don't think he's had the Heisman moment yet. His runs on Saturday against UCLA kind of were awesome in a awkward, nerdy, runs like a baby giraffe way. But I think every Heisman winner has that Heisman moment. You could go back to the Iowa throw to Eliza Surratt as a Heisman moment. It wasn't super flashy. You could go to the throw against Oregon as well. Again, great throw, but not like awesome Heisman moment that you'll see in the highlights all year. Limit turnovers. I think he's got to get to 3,000 yards passing. What's his completion percentage is like 72%. He's got to stay on that course. Over 30 touchdowns. He's already I think he's at 25 passing touchdowns. The IU school record is 29. So that is kind of fringe, might be broken this week. It's within range, but it's going to be broken in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I think if you could get anywhere from 35, maybe 40 touchdowns, and then if you make it to the Big Ten title game, have a big Big Ten title game against a team like Ohio State or whoever is IU's playing, but it's probably going to be Ohio State, just boost those numbers. And Julian Sain is Ohio State's quarterback. He's also in the top 3 in the Heisman odds. And then, Ty Simpson as well. Yeah. I mean, that is a problem in terms of numbers a little bit, but I would hope that this isn't like the AP voters, that people take that into account. But if you're a quarterback who has 30 plus touchdowns, 3,000 yards, and IU's 12-0, it's kind of like, okay, this is the reason. Now there's many reasons why IU's 12-0. It's not just Fernando, but he's the face of that. It is much more impressive to do that at Indiana than it is, say, Ohio State or Alabama. But yeah, he'll get his. He only played 2.5 or 3 quarters against UCLA. He still counted for 4 touchdowns. He played a half against Indiana State and had 6 total touchdowns. He played a half against Illinois, had 5 total touchdowns. It's all about, can you just put those numbers up? I don't think that, and if he plays the whole game and they're up big, he's just going to hand it off. They're not going to run him or let him throw or take a chance on getting hit. So I don't think that plays I'm not too worried about it. If Indiana's up by enough to take him out, we'll see. You should have enough numbers. If Indiana has 5 touchdowns at halftime against Maryland, Fernando Mendoza is probably responsible for at least 4 of them. How do I think Miguel Kamara responds after Sig called him out on Monday? I don't know. He came into the season talking a big game about getting 20 sacks and setting the school record and all those things. I don't think it's because of a lack of effort, although he says that there's another level he needs to unlock. It was definitely a challenge. I think they respond well. Every time Sig has challenged a player, he's come up big. So do I think he comes out and gets 3 sacks against Maryland? No. I mean, that would triple his sack count for the year? No, but I think there are other ways you could quantify how he's playing. So does the Big Ten get 4 teams in the college football playoff? This is a great question, Phil. Let's look. So you got let's look at the standings a little bit. So you got Indiana, Ohio State, Oregon. Then you go Indiana and Ohio State are both undefeated in the Big Ten. You go to the one-loss Big Ten teams that are Oregon, which now sits at 6th, Iowa, who's a 2-loss team, but has 1 Big Ten loss. Michigan, also a 2-loss team with 1 loss in the Big Ten. And USC. How Iowa's not ranked is bugging me. But, those – I don't know how you get an AP vote or whatever, IQ test you have to pass to get it. It's why Iowa's not ranked is absurd. And then USC sitting at 5-2. Their losses are who'd they lose to? They lost to Notre Dame and they lost to somebody else in the Big Ten. So they're 3-1 in the Big Ten. I do think it ends up being 3 teams. I don't know if a 4th team gets it. Iowa's schedule, they have to play Oregon and USC. So somebody is taking another loss there in the Big Ten. I don't think a 2-loss Big Ten team or a team from the Big Ten with 2 conference losses is going to get it. So somebody in that group of 3 is coming out with 2 losses or more. You go to USC, so they do get Iowa. They also play Oregon, so somebody's losing there. So that's another 2-loss Big Ten team, 2 conference losses. And then Michigan. Michigan's the other one. Michigan's kind of the wild card here as the 4th team. And I think they have the best chance. They get a shot at Ohio State at the end of the year at home. I think if they win that game, they'll be the fourth team in. However, if they lose, it's out. And I do think the most likely scenario is the Big Ten gets 3 teams in, and it's Oregon, Indiana, and Ohio State. If USC upsets Oregon and runs the table, Washington could also be in that conversation. They do get Oregon at the end of the year, and they're only 2 losses. It's they've already knocked off Illinois. Their only 2 losses are at Michigan and Ohio State at home. They have to go to Wisconsin, get Purdue at home, at UCLA, and then Oregon at the end of the season. With everybody playing each other, I just don't see 4 teams. I don't see them taking a 2-loss or 3-loss Big Ten team into the playoff, unless something crazy happens with the rest of the field. But I don't think that the teams at the bottom beating up with each other are going to go. How does OSU versus UM go? All I know is that I get to watch it on Saturday because IU and Purdue play on Friday night. It's a good question. I haven't watched a ton of OSU this year, but they seem to be the most sound team and a clear number 1 team in the country right now. Julian Saint's gotten a lot better from week 1. I mean, that was expected. They still have Jeremiah Smith. They have Caleb Downs on defense. Caden Curry's absolutely destroying offensive lines. Now, the big question for me is, do they mentally, is it, we can't beat Michigan, or are you going to turn that around and say, hey, we're on the OSU revenge tour? Last year, nobody thought Michigan could beat Ohio State outside of Michigan fans and maybe a few drunk people at the bar. And that happened. So it's a rivalry game. It could go any way. But I do think Ohio State would win that one. If it doesn't, it gets real interesting real fast. A lot of math involved. I will need a bigger computer screen. All right, good questions. Keep them coming. So we've gone over the Maryland game. I do think Mendoza versus Maryland's corners is our matchup to watch. Key to win. Indiana has to stay disciplined, let Maryland beat themselves. Maryland's a very undisciplined team. They take a ton of penalties. Indiana's receivers should beat their defensive backs. Fernando doesn't put the ball in danger all that often. His interceptions were either because the ball is tipped at the line of scrimmage, he got hit on his throwing arm in Iowa, and he's kind of under pressure. Like the only real bad throw on an interception he made or bad decision was the one at Oregon. And that was, he's backpedaling. He tried to force the ball to EJ Williams, and he just didn't get enough steam on it. So I think he's fine there. Indiana's defensive line should bully Maryland's offensive line. Indiana's offensive line should bully Maryland's defensive line. The run game looks good. This could be the Roman Hemby revenge game, as Colorado pointed out. Kalon Black had a few good runs as well. And then, linebacker play. We'll see if Aiden Fisher plays. I think he does. If not, I think you're okay without him against Maryland. You probably want him back for Penn State just because you need a thumper in there against Katron Allen and those guys. Special teams, you could live without Brandon Frankie this game. If this game comes down to a 58-yard field goal, one, so many people are going to say, I told you so, we needed him, that it's going to be annoying. Two, it's a lot of other things went wrong that Brendan Frankie isn't going to fix. But Quinn Warren has stepped up well on kickoffs. Indiana's kickoff coverage team, when they had a chance to cover kicks, looked very, very good. Portal for next year. Do you agree that we take a high-quality quarterback in the portal next year? I don't know. Can I quantify high quality? I think they take a talented quarterback. I don't think they're going to take a guy who they're going to plug in and start like they did Rourke and Mendoza. I think the chips are in on Alberto Mendoza. He still has to be developed a little bit, but if you're gonna push the chips into the center of the table with him, you got to do it. Now, here's this kind of the scary part and the wild card in this thing. You don't have a spring portal window. So if you go into spring practice or, you go through the winter portal and don't get a quarterback who you could trust and, throw in case Alberto doesn't develop like you think, you're in trouble. Like if you go through spring practice and Alberto's not where you want him to be and you're like, oh, we need an insurance policy, it's not there. I think it would be a higher quality guy than Grant Wilson, but I do think it's somebody who comes in who understands that, yes, they might compete for the job, but there's also a chance you could lose the job. And that's the mentality. I trust Cignetti and the staff with their portal decisions of the quarterbacks. They've had excellent quarterback play no matter who was under center, whether it was first string, second string, third string, JMU, Elon, IUP, wherever, like for the last decade. It's a big question. I also think you got to see what Tyler Cherry could do as well. Is he coming back from injury? Is he going to be there for spring practice? Don't know yet. I heard his recovery is going pretty well. And, there's a shot of him on the sideline where he's holding the iPad and kind of coaching up the other guys. And we're talking about Fernando Mendoza's taking coaching from Tyler Cherry. Fernando Mendoza is like 2 or 3 years older than him and has played a lot more football than him. And he's over there, looking at diagnosing the play or breaking down the play with Tyler Cherry. He's the wild card in all this. If they feel comfortable that he can step into the mix, then you feel okay that maybe you take another depth piece at quarterback. But you lose assuming you lose Fernando Mendoza, you lose Grant Wilson. If you get Cherry back, yeah, you'd want one more scholarship quarterback. That's not a freshman, and then you can start going down the list of building that line of, okay, then it's Alberto, then it's maybe Tyler Cherry or Cash Herrera, then Jamison Purcell comes in, and you're looking at him if he redshirts in 2028, maybe 2029, 2030. That's so far down the road. But yeah, the short answer to your question is I do think they go to the portal for a quarterback. I don't know if they go for an absolute star, which is fine, and you could use those resources somewhere else. What did I think? Byron Baldwin, only a few snaps, but thought he looked good from what we saw. One, it was great to see him on the field. I don't, we don't know what his injury was, but obviously it took him a couple months to come back, and he looked like he has great instincts, a nose for the ball. He made a great special teams tackle. He made another couple stops on defense. How much he plays probably depends on how into game shape he is. Is it a slow ramp up? I think they burn his red shirt. Somebody on the podcast commented that postseason games count, and you're trying to win a national title, and it's right there. And Byron Baldwin could be a big part of that national title run because you need depth at safety with Bryce Bonds going out early. You kind of were counting on Byron Baldwin to be there and be a big playmaker on defense. And if he could be a special teams ace, it's totally worth it to burn his red shirt to go national title hunting, is it not? If IU and OSU complete the season both at 12-0, what will determine the 1 and 2 seed for the championship game? Would OSU get the nod for the home uniforms because they would be ranked higher? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't, outside of the coin toss, I don't know if there's much of an advantage. We'll get into that. It probably comes down to, somebody spinning a tennis racket and saying W or an M. But it is probably the higher seed in the college football playoff polls. That's my official guess. My ridiculous guess is that somebody in some office has an intern spin a tennis racket, and if it goes one way or the other, one team gets to pick their crimson or scarlet jerseys, and the other team wears white. Whatever. Maybe we break out black jerseys for the championship game. I don't know. Whatever. If they're both 12-0, I don't care who gets the home field advantage of calling a coin toss. You're wrong 50% of the time anyway. By the way, speaking of that Big Ten championship, that I know it's early. I know it's about a month or two, 6 weeks too early, but that has a potential to be an all-time IU weekend, or at least IU Saturday in Indianapolis. You have IU and Louisville playing at 2 p.m. at Gainbridge, and then at 8 p.m. it'd be IU against OSU or whoever in the Big Ten title game at Lucas Oil. That would be awesome. If we have enough interest, we could do a pre-basketball game meetup, and then if there is time, we could do a second rally meetup between basketball and football. But we do have to work. But that's a weekend or a Saturday that I have circled on the calendar. It's the hire the babysitter, whatever they want to get paid, we'll pay them. Awesome dudes, whatever. IU football, basketball weekend. And it may not ever happen again to have both teams playing in Indy on the same day. So would would it be cool to highlight more former IU stars at pregame and halftime of the Wisconsin game? I think IU doesn't do a good enough job of honoring their past. I know the history of IU football. I know the losingest football school of all time, which is close to getting thrown out the window. So please root against Northwestern because they're next in line. But IU's had some great football history. You go Antoine Randall, Adewale Ogunleye. I mean, you could go back to the Rose Bowl teams, and before that with George Taliaferro and the Corby Davis and all those guys. I don't think IU does a good enough job of highlighting the great players. Not good players, they're great players that came through Bloomington. Whether it's, they used to have the banners outside Memorial Stadium. They took those down. There's plaques for those teams on the south end zone, which are kind of like like if you're walking by and don't know it's there, you're not going to see it. Like they need to honor their guys like they honor the basketball guys at Assembly Hall. It's just, if you're going to be good at football and want to build some tradition, I'm not saying being a football school, because I think being a football or basketball school is like irrelevant. Just be good at sports, be good at everything. IU's great at soccer, unbelievable at swimming and diving. They have the history in basketball, and football's off the charts right now. You're a really good sports school, so lean into the football history a little bit. Talk about your All-Americans. Talk about your college football Hall of Famers. So, Rally, we talked about this earlier. The only ones I would see going is if JMU opens. That's a total guess. Let's run through the job. Florida's not going coordinator. They're going to go to established head coach to win. They'll back to Brink's truck up at Lane Kiffin. I don't know why Lane Kiffin would leave Ole Miss for Florida. Outside of that, it's closer to Boca Raton. LSU is an absolute mess right now, but they're not going to go coordinator from the north. I think that they need to go John Summerall or somebody else from the south who could recruit that state. Summerall's at Tulane, which is right down the road from Baton Rouge. They need a better culture fit than Mr. Family Man Brian Kelly there. What else is open? Virginia Tech's going to go James Franklin. Penn State, I don't know where Penn State's going to go. They might go Brian Hartline, but if you're going to go coordinator, that's the only coordinator I would go. I think Penn State's learning that they're not the big deal that they think they are. If I was Penn State, I would go after Bob Chesney at JMU, and that's where I would think that one of the IU coordinators goes and they look at. But I don't think that a P4 school who's trying to make a splash hire, who wants to win now, is going to go after a coordinator with no head coaching experience. Same at UCLA. Maybe Jonathan Smith goes out to UCLA and Chesney goes to Michigan State. But there are, if you're one of those schools paying a $50 million buyout or $20 million buyout, I don't think you go coordinator with no head coaching experience. And that's not a knock on the IU coordinators. They're great coaches, but it's a bigger roll of the dice than saying, hey, let's go get James Franklin. Let's go get, Pat Fitzgerald's name is being thrown around too. I don't think that's a tremendous hire for anybody. Is Sharon Moore in trouble with Michigan, with the NCAA? Who are we talking about here? I think he's in trouble with the fan base. I think that it's just awkward up there. He's done a decent job. I think, Harbaugh left that program, I don't want to say in shambles, but he's left it in an awkward spot. So now Moore is getting suspended for things he did or didn't do or whatever. So he was suspended for 2 games this year. He's got another game suspension for next year. I think what he has going for him is that the last 2 years he's beaten Ohio State. He came in as the interim or replacement coach for Harbaugh at the end of 2023, beat Ohio State, and then last year shocked the world beating Ohio State in Columbus. If Ohio State blows the doors off of them, he's probably in a lot of trouble. But he does have Bryce Underwood, which gives you hope. He's a 5-star true freshman. He's played okay. He hasn't been great. But yeah, the fan base is kind of fractured over him from what I could tell. I wouldn't put him on the hot seat yet. But again, Ryan Day was going to get fired before the playoff last year because he lost to Michigan and he ended up winning the national title. And there's still some Ohio State fans who probably, if they lose to Michigan this year, would say, see you later, Ryan. You can't beat Michigan. So it's a different breed. Michigan's also a mess with their AD and, their NIL money isn't flowing like one would think a Michigan NIL fund would flow. So, good question. It's not one that I have on my radar as a job opening. The ones I do, Florida State, I think opens. Wisconsin opens. I do think Michigan State opens, so we'll see. Seems like any new head coach going, so I don't know if you are on the forums or whatever, but I sent this in our group text and then posted on the forums. The scene from Iron Man where Obadiah is yelling at the scientists to make the arc reactor smaller. And they're like, well, we don't know how to do it. We can't do it. And he's like, well, the technology's right there. And Tony Stark built it in a cave with a box of scraps. It's kind of like, well, Signetti could go 12-0 at Indiana with a bunch of G5 All-Stars and Fernando Mendoza. Well, not every coach is Kurt Signetti and not every scientist is Tony Stark. So you have a great one at IU, and I do think it puts pressure because it's like, how can this guy do it at a historically terrible program, and we can't do it at Florida State, LSU, Penn State, or whatever, and all that stuff. Do I think Jeff Brom stays put at Louisville? There are 2 or 3 head coaches who are coaching at their alma mater that, are kind of in play for bigger jobs. Brent Key at Georgia Tech, Jeff Brom at Louisville, and there's a third one that I'm forgetting. So it's I don't have a thumb on Louisville, but it was like all the smoke when Brom was at Purdue was when he was going to Louisville. It wasn't if he was going to Louisville, it was when. And he stayed the 1 year and then got out after the Big Ten title game at that appearance. But do I think Wisconsin's not going to go after Bob Bostad? That is the opposite hire of what you want to do. Plus, I don't think Bob Bostad wants to be a head coach. The guy despises talking to human beings. He is a football coach. He wants to coach the offensive line. That's all he wants to do. He doesn't want to take questions from anybody. He's a nice dude. He is. I met him in the parking lot. His wife was trying to back out their giant Suburban or whatever land yacht that they were running. Super nice guy. But he is not, I don't think it would be a great head coach to hire just based on that personality. Do I think Rule? Absolutely. I think Matt Rule leaves for Penn State if Penn State offers. That seems to be what's trending. I know him and Pat Kraft have a deep relationship. I know Penn State fans wouldn't be happy with that hire either. You fire James Franklin, you're playing a huge buyout just to hire another guy who can't win a top 25 game. But I do think that if Penn State came calling, Rule would leave Nebraska. I've talked to some people in Nebraska who are fans, and they think the same thing. So he's definitely talking to people at Penn State, and it's on his mind. Another topic we covered. I'll quickly go over it. I won't give you the whole symposium that I gave the other guys. I do think they go after a transfer quarterback. However, I do think Alberto enters the offseason as quarterback one, or that's how they plan to be, is have Alberto at quarterback one. We'll see where Tyler Cherry is physically. He got injured last year in the practice for playoffs. I don't think he's been on the practice field at all. He's been he's not even on the roster. So they took him off to be a student coach. He might be throwing the ball, but I still think he's in that rehab standpoint. He's kind of the wild card in it. If he could go for spring practice, he'd feel a little bit better about the room. But I do think you bring in a transfer quarterback either to compete with Alberto for the starting job or just as an insurance policy, just in case something happens, whether it be Alberto not developing as quickly as they thought, or an unfortunate injury, or Tyler Cherry isn't ready to come back yet. So it's a good question. But yeah, we already answered it. And the replay of this chat comes out, I think, like 18 to 24 hours afterwards. And we have it posted in the forums and on social media and stuff like that. And it'll be on our YouTube page as well. So you could always go back and listen to it, not live, but I appreciate the questions. All right, we've gone a little over an hour. I will give you guys a few more minutes to send questions in. If not, we'll get out of here at 9:35. Enjoy the rest of the World Series and some CUSA games. Do you think they're from Jamie? Do you think there could be no, I don't think so. I mean, that's a I don't know. I'm a Jets fan, and I don't think they have the personnel to develop a quarterback. But that's besides the point. I don't know if you turn down being the top pick. Like, you got to take it. Your stock is never going to be higher if you're Fernando Mendoza. And I know that, NIL money could help make up for some of that. But IU's not going to pay him first-round NFL draft money. And, yeah, it might be another year. And who knows? The Jets might suck again next year and get the number one pick. You don't know. That I think it is a pipe dream to kind of say, hey, I'm going to forego the draft because of the team in there. Could it happen? Yeah, but I don't think it would happen because he's the number one pick. I think that maybe more happens towards the middle or the end where you're like, you know what, let's try to bump up our stock. His stock can't get higher. So it'd be fun to have it back next year, but I don't think so. You could also do what Eli and John Elway did and say, hey, I'm not playing for your franchise, and threaten to go back to school, and they trade the pick or trade you to another team. We'll see. All right, last call for questions. All right, if that's all of them, in terms of transfer key, I haven't looked at who's in the portal, who's potentially going to the portal, and all that stuff yet. in the middle of a season where Indiana is fighting for a national title. They're putting bows on the 2026 recruiting class. The portal's not even open yet for a lot of these teams. So something that in the weeks leading up to the playoff where there's a little bit more downtime and the portal opens. Yeah. I haven't watched all that. I know he passed for 608 yards. I think, he's probably one who wants to start, but he wouldn't be a bad pickup. I haven't taken a full dive into the portal because we're still doing in-season stuff. I know other sites have, but that's with our resources or lack thereof of national resources, we're going to cover the team and all our teams. We cover basketball. We've got basketball coming up, women's hoops, got a soccer team fighting for a national title as well. Volleyball is going to make the NCAA tournament. Portal quarterbacks in the very edge of the back of my mind. Maybe you could throw Aiden Childs in there as well. Maybe he goes or he follows Smith somewhere. There's just anything could happen, especially if the coaching carousel is going to spin out of control here in a few weeks anyway. So, all right, Indiana, Maryland, 3:30 on Saturday on CBS. Tune in. We'll have it all covered for you. Ben Gillard will be at the game as well for all your breakdown. We'll be in the forums. We'll have pregame, postgame, all the analysis coming up for you and all that stuff. So enjoy. We got one last one from Jamie, and then we're out of here because it's almost bedtime. I know Underwood gets paid, but will he be happy to play the same style next season? I don't know. I don't know. They kind of unleashed him with Big Poggi when Moore was, suspended. Maybe that's something they reevaluate. IU's not going to pay whatever Dave Portnoy paid Bryce Underwood to go to Michigan. It's just not going to happen. And I don't think it's a smart thing to do either if you are IU. You look at Darren Mensah at Duke. They reportedly paid him like $4 million, but they have nothing around him. For IU, I think you have a emerging star in Alberto. If he could get developed the right way, and the staff can develop quarterbacks, go get a couple offensive linemen, go get a playmaker, a receiver. You're going to need a couple running backs as well, even though Lee Beebe comes back. You got to see what Omar Cooper does in terms of the draft as well. And then you have some linebackers to replace. With Aiden Fisher, you have D'Angelo Pons in the secondary you're probably going to have to replace. There are better ways to use that money than overpay for a quarterback who might not develop it the way you want it to develop. So, anyway, tune in Saturday. Last plug for our subscriptions as well. I put the link earlier in the chat. I will put it in again. So we have 3 levels of subscriptions. We have a free subscription that comes with our countdown to kickoff, countdown to tip-off articles, our forums, gamers, press conferences, and other events, and the ability to enter into fantasy leagues with prizes. So, like right now, we are doing the College Pick'em League, and it is a bunch of mediocre people being mediocre at picking football games, but the winner gets like $80. So we have a monthly subscription for $3 a month and a yearly subscription for $30 for 12 months for the year. That's premium content, includes in-depth analysis for IU football and basketball, recruiting updates and interviews, exclusive interviews. We have the IU reactionary on there and all that stuff. Weekly chats with us, which is right now free, but could move over. And then all that stuff as well. So come over, subscribe. It helps us provide the best content we can, and helps us kind of incentivize our great writers and content makers as well. So, if you want to see what we're about, get the free one or get a month. If you don't like it, I'm not going to hold it against you. You switch to the free. You could tell us to go kick grass. So anyway, thanks for joining us. Good chat tonight. Tune in IU football 3:30 on Saturday, and then next week we'll really dive into basketball with the season opener on Wednesday, and then also the game against Marquette on November 9th up in Chicago. And we'll have it all covered for you with our candy stripe scoop from TJ Inman, which will break down the games, and I'll post twice a week. So if you have any suggestions, hit up the email. Have a good night and enjoy the rest of the football season. And happy Halloween. Hopefully everybody it stays dry, and we get the dad and mom tax and get the good candy. As Kirk Signetti said, it's not always about the costume. It's about getting as much candy as you can. So go get that candy. Go get those Reese's and Snickers and whatever it is you like, and enjoy the time.